As we all know, it has been almost over 5 decades since the development of economics as a distinct field in economic research. In addition to that, abundance of economists have started to invest a huge amount of their intellectual efforts to study the factors related to and the powerful impact of economic growth that is called the development of economics. The main focus of this issue is to study the factors that oppose the growth and its transformational consequences on the people's standard of living within these years of economic growth. The main indicator in helping to grow a successful economics infrastructure of a developing country are by applying the sciences of Maqasid al-Shari'ah. It is shown by the stabilizing role it plays regarding all reform packages that are rooted in the Islamic paradigm.
What are developing countries? The World Bank defined that a developing countries is one in which the population of industrial countries is highly and most of them live on far less money for far fewer basic public service. The developing country can be categorized as a lower middle income country LMIC since it is less economically, less developed industrial base and less human development index HDI compared to other countries. What are the characteristics of developing countries? There are some common characteristics in developing countries. The first characteristics in developing countries is low per capita income. The low levels of per capita income in developing countries is because of the low levels of productivity in various fields of production. The next characteristic of developing countries is rapid population growth rates and unemployment rates. The great consequence is that it will throw more people into the informal sector to earn their living from agriculture since alternative occupations do not develop simultaneously and thus there are no increasing numbers of seeking employment. How do developing countries contribute to the economy? The developing countries contribute to the economy by increasing government spending. In order to strengthen domestic taxation and raise more revenues to finance public goods, they need to be more focused on improving the business environment to attract private capital so that they can mobilize private finance for development. Nowadays, most developing economies are more focused on building fiscal and market institutions. This is because it will lead to a massive expansion of social insurance and protection spending. Other than that, the volume of exports and the production of natural resources have positive effects on economic growth in developing countries in a long period, while increase in investment have a positive effect only in a short period of time.
Infrastructure is a term used to describe facilities that are important for every country and its resident, while infrastructure development is one of the major determinants of economic expansion and economic growth, especially for developing countries. Commonly, all of the infrastructure was known as public facilities that are being used by the residents of cities and towns. Consequently, the increased spending on infrastructure incorporates a multiple effect on the economic process because it demands industrial growth and manufacturing. However, most of infrastructure is likely to be financed by the general public and the corporate sector. What are the factors of infrastructure development in Malaysia? There are several factors of infrastructure development in Malaysia such as social, economic, and environmental factors. The first one is social factors. Social factors are covered by social sustainability of infrastructure investment, public ethics, transparency, and society's willingness to buy infrastructure services. The second one is economic factors, where economics are involved by national vision for infrastructure project, macroeconomics, strictness, stable legal and regulating framework. Therefore, the economic can help strengthen infrastructure development. The next factor is the environmental. The environmental impact may be positive or negative, and it may occur during the construction and operating process of most forms of infrastructure. How does infrastructure affect development in Malaysia? Infrastructure is important for economic expansion in every region, such as electricity, roads, water system, public utility, airport, railroad, and telecommunication. This is because it helps increase economic activity by conducting domestic and cross-country trade and mobility. Other than that, the infrastructure also impact the economic growth in Malaysia during the initial period of construction work by creating more job vacancies in the related industry. The infrastructure contributes to the casing of urbanization in developing country to the core of business activity, so that it will help improve infrastructure in sectors and raise the value of their asset and increase human capital.
Maqasid al-Shari'ah, or known as the objectives of Islamic law, comprises those benefits and advantages behind the revelation of Islamic laws for the realization of benefit to the mankind. It also helps in concerning their affairs both in this world and the hereafter, also branches the aim of securing benefit for the people and protecting them against corruption of evil. The objectives of Maqasid al-Shari'ah can be classified into three, which are Daruriyah, Hajiyah, and Tahsiniyah. Firstly, Daruriyah means the necessity that explains the objectives, which are the basic for the establishment of welfare in this world and the hereafter. Daruriyah are strongly related to these five basics protection, which are the protection of faith, the protection of life, the protection of lineage, the protection of property, and the protection of intellect. Secondly, Hajiyah, which brings the meaning of requirement. All of the elements in Sharia are aimed at facilitating life, and removing hardships are said to fulfill the Hajiyah. For example, the permission of hunting due to the usage of making halal goods for food, and lodging for the help in the manufacture of infrastructure. Lastly, Tahsiniyat, or known as the embellishment. The Sharia clearly beautifies life and puts comforts into it. These three classifications of Maqasid al-Shari'ah are related to one another, and this relationship is called Shatibi.
The 17th Sustainable Development Goal, or called as SDG, is the global goal to achieve prosperity in 2030. The contribution of Maqasid al-Shari'ah in the infrastructure development of a developing country can be linked to Goal 9, which is focusing in building resilient infrastructure, promoting sustainable industrialization, and fostering innovation in the country. There are 5 main targets to be achieved. Firstly is developing high-quality infrastructure which is affordable and fair access to the society. Secondly, promoting sustainable industrialization business which elevates industry share of employment and gross domestic product (GDP). Next target is to specifically help small industrial businesses in their financial crisis. Fourth, sustaining the industry and infrastructure by upgrading the resource use efficiency. Lastly, improving scientific research, technological industrial ability, and innovating sectors. At this moment, all countries in the world are facing COVID-19 crisis that has affected many industry and lead to economic downturn. Yet, immediately after the COVID-19 crisis has come to an end, the government needs to invest in building infrastructure, while the corporate sectors develop infrastructure to speed up economic growth, increase job availability, and reduce society's hardship. Naturally, this government intervention and the corporate sector's support is to achieve Maqasid Shari'ah, which lead to a greater development.
Infrastructure development is one of the indicators to measure whether the developing countries are showing economic growth, and it should give benefit to the majority of the public and be fully utilized by them. One of the challenges to develop infrastructure is answering the question whether the infrastructure development can satisfy human needs and whether it is applicable for everybody. The elements in Maqasid Shari'ah itself are applicable to all mankind that are aimed to facilitate human life and remove their hardship. These objectives are similar with infrastructure developments that are aimed at quality of life improvement while stimulating economic growth.
The Daruriyah has a strong connection to the development of the infrastructure in a developing country. Both health and safety facilities are essential because it will protect human life from danger and hazard.
For instance, the existence of police stations, for example, coincident with the prohibition of destruction of human life that Islam promotes and prescribes punishments for those who violate people's right to life.
As far as Maqasid Sharia is concerned, one cannot deny others the right to live and enjoy the same.
People will embrace the greatness of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, thus directing people to perform their role as Khalifah in acts toward fellow men and the environment through the provision of these facilities.
Protection of intellect in Maqasid al-Shari'ah proves that it guides the development of the infrastructures in a country. The provision of education facilities will enable self and the community to acquire intellectual skills and knowledge to understand the subject matter and be able to appraise what is wrong towards the pleasure of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Thus, people can build a good infrastructure facility in a country that can benefit all when they have a good intellect. In addition, protection of faith that is included in Maqasid al-Shari'ah is also very crucial in preserving the infrastructure in a country. Without proper protection of faith and comprehension of the legal knowledge, it will result in major problems such as terrorism, where it happens due to violence motivated by only understanding a very small part of the legal knowledge. Terrorism will lead to the destruction of the infrastructure of a country, especially the public facilities. With strong faith, the community will also embrace the presence of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala in every human undertaking, acts or omissions directed by His revelation through the Al-Quran and Al-Sunnah, thus preserving the infrastructure from being destroyed. Furthermore, Maqasid al-Shari'ah concerns about the protection of wealth or property in any of our actions, including in developing infrastructure of a country. The government or any party that acts as the infrastructure developer in the country should make use of the budgeted money for the development infrastructure wisely and with full trust to avoid any problems such as the infrastructure or the facilities not being built up within the allocated time, or the resources for the construction are not enough suddenly. All in all, the infrastructure development will enable the self and the community to acquire, accumulate, distribute, and manage wealth according to the Islamic Muamalat towards achieving value for money in the long run.
In conclusion, the philosophy of Maqasid al-Shari'ah and infrastructure are supremely dependent on each other to build a better economic, social, and environmental life. Practically, the protection of Maqasid al-Shari'ah is the objective of SDG 9 that can be interrelated due to the same direction of goal, that is to ease life and remove hardship. This proves how important Maqasid al-Shari'ah in contributing a positive effect towards the country infrastructure development of a developing country.